going on, Epic Understanding family? You guys know that I be backstage dancing to the music of boom, boom, boom. You know, that's my jam. So I appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I really do have somebody very special, somebody that you are going to enjoy. And I'm bringing her on because I think she can make a difference in all of our lives. She is going to be talking about ACEs and why they matter. Now, what's ACEs? All of us been a child, right? And none of us have a perfect childhood. Well, ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And tonight, I have the president, CEO, and founder, you guys. Everybody say founder. I have the founder. Yes, I have the founder of Aces Matters, and so she just has a heart uh, for this, and she is pouring herself not only into the families, but she's pouring herself into to the community. And so, listen, without further ado, because really I could talk about her good all day long, but I'm gonna let her tell you a little bit about her mission and herself for herself. What's going on, Miss Cendie Stanford, girl? How you doing?
What it do, Coach Love? What it do? What it do?
Girl, you got it. I'm just excited to have you here tonight.
I can't. I wouldn't want to be nowhere else. You be bringing it. You be bringing it. You be sharing them love spirits all the way from Missouri. I'm over here in Florida, and I still feel you. So I'm glad to be here. I love your show.
Girl, love is electric.
It is. I'm gonna send some. I'm gonna send
Yes,
some.
yes. Look, I felt that. I felt that. So tell us why you founded Aces Matter.
You want the truth or a lie?
You know I want the truth. You know we transparent here. Look, I'm gonna give you a cameo. Here you go. Bam. There you go.
Oh, she giving me a cameo. Okay, here I go with my pitch. So the politically correct version is I found Aces Matter so that there were more people of minority origins that could go around and like talk about our childhood trauma so that as adults we understand like where my behavior come from. I would say if you saw me on the corner at a 7-Eleven, if you saw me on the corner at a 7-Eleven and you asked me why you start Aces Matter, and I would say to help you heal any adulthood problems that you have. So my girl Erica knows that I do this work because I was in my 40s and I realized, oh, I've been calling myself a hot mess for a long time. So I needed to figure out why I was in my head about being a hot mess when I'm 2, 3 degrees in. I've been a school principal. It looked like on the outside that I was doing okay, but on the inside, I was feeling a hot mess. And Aces Matter helped me figure out where it was coming from. So that's why I started it. That's why I started it. I started it so other kids who grew up like me have the answer that they need by the time before they get 40 something. Like it was me. I didn't find out till I was 40 something. So here I am trying to share what I know with the world based on the experiences I've had and God's grace, obviously.
Yes, you know what? That is so beautiful. And it comes from such a genuine place. I'm actually thankful because sometimes people look at people with degrees, or matter of fact, we look at ourselves and say, okay, I'm 1 degree in, 2 degree in, oh, I'm 3 degrees in, oh, I got a doctor. Hey, doctorate.
Yeah.
But you're still not okay.
You're
You're still
hot
not
mess on
healed.
the inside. You don't even want to wake up in the morning. So yeah. So Aces
Hmm.
Matter has finding this foundation and having an understanding of not just the science part of it. The
Hmm.
science part of it was really cool. Like it helped me understand what, I'm the best way I can say it that's not politically correct. I was learning a lot of science from people with not a lot of melanin in their skin, if you will. And
Okay.
it was good stuff. So they put a lot of footwork into unpacking this stuff that explains what happens to a child's brain when they exposed to a whole bunch of mess in their childhood, right? So I realized when I was going to all of these conferences and all of these trauma-informed opportunities that I had a chance to get exposed to because I was a principal, like I needed to learn about kids, right?
Uh-huh.
It all made sense when they put that acronym, ACEs. So when I was able to take that acronym, get the science, I realized, wow, that PowerPoint, the one with that data up there on that big screen TV, that big old screen TV,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's talking about me and my brother and my sister
Wow.
and my mama and my grandmama and my auntie and my great great. I mean, like I realized they were talking about us in those data points, but they wasn't
Okay.
using our name. So yeah.
So, what did you do to get beyond the point, it's not just me? Tell me about that process.
You know what? Why did I have a feeling you was gonna ask that?
Because you know,
You was gonna ask it that way, but I was like, let me just tell people, just in case you catch the broadcast now or later. I think we all want to know like how you fix it. Okay, you figure it out, like you got it. So how you fix them? First, I'm gonna say all praises to the Most High, right? Like
hmm
I was a drive-by believer, if you will. I was thanking Jesus, God is good when something good was happening, right? But
okay, okay,
honestly, I'm gonna say I can't do Aces Matter without sharing my testimony, right?
okay,
I know people be like, everybody say that, but the truth is, I was trying to figure out what was going on with me mentally through self-help books,
hmm
through YouTube channels. My man actually didn't told me, he was like, "You sure you don't want to sell some of them books? You already read them. You ain't gonna read but a couple of chapters." So I was going every single place I could to try to figure out what's wrong with me, right?
okay.
So I started with the books. I'm gonna tell you what I did wrong. I started with all the wrong books, if you will, but I never gave up faith. Like I would always like, thank you, God, thank you, God. But it's not like it is today. So from the self-help books to back in my school principal days, they would have this thing called a 360 feedback tool.
Oh yes, I love that tool.
Girl, you love it until you read what people think about you without putting their name on the survey. So
No, that's why I love it.
yeah, it is. Well, when you're not healed, when you ain't been able to process your emotions, you take that kind of feedback personally, right? So
Okay,
for me, I got feedback from other people. I was reading books. I was getting therapy, right? But
okay.
I wasn't finding a therapist that could help me unpack like where my source of these crazy depressive thoughts were coming from. So I would say books, feedback from other people, therapy I tried, and obviously a whole bunch of just messed up a whole bunch, like relationship wise. Like why that relationship didn't work out. I just knew I had him locked in.
hmm
It worked. So a lot of failed relationships, Erica.
So you decided that something's going on with me. I've seen all these data points. I saw myself in these data points. So I'm going to do something about it. Now, how many aces do you have?
There are 10 on
Okay.
the abbreviated version of the ACE study, which was done
Okay.
way back in the 90s. So they broke it down and they said, well, just let's work with these 10 and see what happened. Of the 10, I scored a 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that happened to me or that I was exposed to before I turned age 18. So I had all 10 of them. And basically that meant that all the bad things that could happen to a child growing up before they turn 18, I was front row seats to it.
So there is a lady that I was talking to about you,
Uh-huh.
and I told her that we were doing this show.
Uh-huh.
Her name is Charmin, and she told me the same thing, that she scored a 10.
You want me to hit you with a data point?
Yes, ma'am.
If you line up 10 people in a row, of those 10 people,
Mhm.
6 of them are going to have at least one.
Right.
Okay, maybe you feel like, oh, one's not so bad because maybe just their parents got divorced, right? Because that's one of the criteria. So if
hmm
you line up 10 people, you count them off, at least 6 of them gonna have an ace and not know it. That it's
Okay.
called this thing called an ace. However, if you line up those same 10 people,
Uh-huh.
of those same 10 people, 4 of them, let me get this right. I just did this data yesterday. 4 of them will have a score of 4 or higher. I'm gonna have to go back and correct myself. Why come I couldn't just remember that? Like I literally just did the commercial yesterday. It's gonna come back to me.
That's
But
all
all
right.
I
You
can
do that.
say is they're really common. They happen to everybody, right? Your
Uh-huh.
parents get divorced, you got an ace. your mama talk about you growing up, like, girl, you fat, you need to lose weight, stop eating so much. And so if your mama's emotionally getting in your mental like that about just the way you look, that will qualify as an ACE if your mom's doing it constantly and is not aware of it. So they're common. All that to say is that they're common. The study that talked about people, I got it. It came back to me.
There you go.
It came back to me. Good listening. Okay. If you line up 6 people, 1 out of every 6 people will have at least 4. Remember, I told you I had 10. So 1 out of 6 are going to have at least 4. So line up 6 people, pick any one of them. You know, hey, how many you got? You're going to find one of them that it has at least 4 ACEs. And I share that to say, because when they did that study, they said, if a kid has 5 or more ACEs, they deem us a risk to society.
Okay.
That's real talk, right? So, and when they say that, it's like without intervention, oh, there's a whole bunch of ACEs growing up in this zip code. We might need to try to look for some property to start building some prisons over here, because it don't look, girl, I ain't making this up, right? So 5 or more ACEs, they consider you basically a risk to society in multiple different ways, right? It's either like, let's start building some prisons because there's a whole bunch of kids coming out of this zip code that they, for whatever reason, they're not getting their life together because their parents had ACEs and blah, 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 blah. Or if they're not building prison systems, you can imagine there's a hospital that's going to be a community hospital that's going to be receiving those same people, because ACEs don't just like come for your mental, they come for your health. Okay. So we like to explain that to people, like it's important to know about these, because not only is it going to mess with us mentally, like it go for our immune system, girl. Like, yeah.
So I have a question. Is this a part of the same study to where they started building prisons, like if you can't read in the 3rd grade? Is this a part of that same study, or is it separate?
I'm not gonna say without a shadow of, like, I wouldn't doubt it. Like, I don't know if they called it the same thing, but there's a ton of correlation, right? Because this study came out in the 1990s. Okay. So I'm not sure about that one, but there, for example, prison population. You think of the prison population, there was a study recently done in a California prison. 96% of those prisoners, it's 96 or 97, I don't be getting my math right. It's a whole bunch of them, have at least 1 ACE at 1, right? So you think you line up all the prisoners, and I was thinking like, okay, so the 3% that didn't have it, like, did they just not take the test, or did they just say ain't telling you what's on them? So it's very common to have ACEs in prison, and obviously there's like a lot of science to explain like why that happens.
So what populations don't have ACEs?
Ain't no such thing. We all got them.
Okay.
And the whole world is talking about them right now. Oprah and this dude named Dr. Bruce Perry just wrote a book about them maybe 3 months ago. Yeah.
So ACEs, Leaf asked us what inspired ACEs, you know, the name ACEs. And so it's adverse childhood experiences. That's what it is. And I don't know who came up with that. Do you know who came up with that?
Yeah, Dr. Vince Finetti. So these 2 doctors in California. That acronym is not like a trademark acronym. Like it's just a short word. Like it's just 3 letters to shorten that whole, because adverse childhood experiences is really long to say. So all that is an acronym. The doctors who founded the study, they founded the study, and I'm gonna be not so politically correct. They founded the study because they was trying to figure out why overweight women kept gaining weight. So the study had nothing to do with childhood trauma. The study had everything to do with them working with obese women and trying to help obese women lose weight. And they fell on it by accident, because he tells this story, Dr. Finetti tells this story. I'm butchering his name. He tells this story, and he says he had a client that was like 400 and some pounds, give or take, right? She had spectacular results and got down into like 100 and some pounds, right? And all of a sudden she disappeared. And he said by the time he saw her again, maybe a year or so later, she had put all the weight back on.
Okay.
And he wanted to know what happened. And further investigation led her to saying she was triggered at a job by a man at work that hit on her, that reminded her of the man who sexually abused her when she was a child. So resorted to emotional eating again. So because she was sexually abused as a child, which obesity is highly connected to ACEs, because she was sexually abused as a child, she attached to food. Okay. Attached to that food. And then when that older guy hit on her, he reminded her of the old man that had raped her when she was a kid. And in her mind, she had told herself that if I'm unattractive, if I don't look good, maybe I won't be hit on. So she stopped caring about herself. And so that led them to saying, wow, let's go back and ask some of these other people. Like, and so they did this whole thing, and they found out it was such a connection to all these women that were struggling with obesity. At some point before they turned 18, somebody was touching them kids.
Wow. You want to know what? Men have long known that women who were overweight were different emotionally than women who were, I don't know, more fit. And so they would kind of just address it as confidence. And honestly, I promise you, I had a guy break down to me why you would ask certain women out. I'll give you one. He told me, you see that one? We were in the grocery store. He said, you see that woman over there? I was like, yeah. He said a woman would think that a man would not come for her the way she looked. And the girl, she was kind of sloppy looking. She was overweight. She had her kids with her. She had like some breakfast cereal on her clothes. And a man see her and he sees what he can get out of her. She's got 2 kids, so you know there's going to be food on the table. You know nobody's not caring about the way she looked. Look how she came out the house. So all you got to do is give her a few compliments, and she gets attached to you.
Yeah.
And so he literally broke down that psychology for me. I will never forget it. And he said, so the reason why you don't let a man pick you up when you look any kind of way is because he thinks of you that way.
Oh, and here I was going to the store thinking, why men be picking on me when I'll be looking my worst?
That's what he broke down to me. And he's like, I'm just gonna give you a little peep in the game book.
Okay, I can dig it. Okay, men are from
Mars and women are from Venus.
Venus.
And I'm not going to
too when I got broke up with. I got broke up with and was like, well, let me go read the book. All along it was my aces. He didn't want to be with me because of my aces, even though I didn't know that's what it was at the time. But yeah.
Right. You know what? Who we are and how we represent ourselves in the world, even being overconfident. Confidence is sexy, but when you are cocky to the point you're confused, and it's actually a mask that you're putting on so you don't have to be vulnerable.
Right.
You know, a predator sees that as well. That's blood in the water.
That's blood in the water. And it's
Blood
so
in the
sad. It's so sad, right?
The
Because
question is,
yeah.
the question is, has that person figured out how to navigate those particular waters?
Not to like, for me, like if I was with you in the store, that situation, I wouldn't want to generalize it, but I know that there's plenty of times where I went to the store today with my bonnet on, and I'm sure if Monique had seen me, she'd been like, what? So I saw, I'm in Publix, which is the very well-to-do shopping store over in my area, and I just needed to run to the store, and I was just like, you know what, I'm keeping my bonnet on, right?
Okay.
I happened to see another sister in the store shopping, and she had her bonnet on. I was like, I did the head nod, like, hey, we got our bonnets on. And Monique was see it. So I would say, in terms of the healing, I guess it really just depends. So, like, if somebody was to like judge a book by its cover, like what they saw today, they would have been misinformed, right?
Right.
Because just running to the store, and I probably would have peeped game if somebody would have tried to not today, Satan. So, yeah, I don't know.
I
And
think
that's
it's
a
called shoot your shot. You know, they try you.
yeah,
They try you. They try
yeah,
you. Leaf said that he doesn't think that most men are that smart. It could be. It could be, but I will say game recognize game, and
yes,
some people really do try to study up under the feet of a player. Like they get taught the game.
yeah. And that's so sad, right? Like that's so sad. I have a friend of mine who has been on the show that I was doing a couple of times, and he discloses like how he learned how to be a cheater, right?
Okay. Okay.
So his dad growing up would take him with him when he went to go cheat on his mom,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
So as confusing as that is to a 10 or 11-year-old boy, he not getting it. But at that point, that memory was ingrained in that baby. And one of two, it's a 50-50 chance. One of two things could happen. That boy will look at that and detest what his dad did, or he will look at that and say, I want to be like my daddy,
Right.
right? It's a 50-50 chance. And in this situation, sadly, when this guy thinks about not the infidelity with his current marriage, he replays that story in his head about
Mm.
was first exposed to infidelity. So whether the dad was trying to teach it on purpose, or I've heard multiple stories where the dad will take the kids with him to make it look like, I got the kids,
Right.
honey. And they drop the kids off somewhere and then go do, so, kids see everything. Y'all know we've all been kids. We knew when our parents was doing the do in the room, even though the door, like we see stuff just because we didn't say anything. So I think parents need to understand, like kids see and understand more than we can imagine. So it's a 50-50 chance. It's basically Russian roulette with your kids, whether or not it's going to have a positive effect or a negative effect. More times than not, it's going to have a negative effect.
So I wonder this: when a child, or when a dad, or God forbid a mom, but whoever, when a parent takes their child to have or allows their child to have a sexual experience at a very young age, like, I can honestly say, I have heard this. I would rather know what my child is doing. So they do something like let them have sex in the house, or let them smoke weed, you know, in the house, just stuff like that versus regulating them. Does that show up in ACEs? How does that work?
Because I'm a follower of Jesus, I'm gonna say we shouldn't be doing that. Just
Right.
like
Okay.
just I'm
Okay.
gonna put that out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't what was practiced in our house, right?
Uh-huh.
But if it was, things would have been differently. But I will say promiscuity is highly associated with adverse childhood experiences,
Okay.
right? It can unfold in multiple ways. If I understood the question, it's like if a parent allows the kid to have the relation, like,
Yeah, making, exposing them to adult things. For instance, like, say you drinking a beer and the kid's like, "Hey dad, can I have a beer?" And so they're 13 and they, start drinking a beer. And the next thing you know, by the time they're 15, they're having a beer with their parents regularly, you know. Um, and so, like in American culture, we don't
okay,
let kids do that, generally. But in like French culture, they drink wine all the time. Now they don't get drunk, they don't get drunk, but Americans get drunk. And so I'm just trying to figure out, when we have a child starting to make adult decisions, participating in adult things, does that create the ACE? So I'm trying to figure out, what is it that creates the ACE? You know?
okay. I can answer from that standpoint. I can't answer from the standpoint of like a parent. Like I had a friend that said the same thing. Like he would rather have his kids drinking at the house than like out in the streets, because in his mind they were going to do it anyway. And I judged
Uh-huh.
him. And that was before my heel self, and I definitely judged him for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I can't speak to that, but what I would say, if parents are going to do that, then
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage parents to know the risk, right?
Okay.
Like, do you know what alcohol does to a teenage brain? First of all, the teenage brain is doing its most development from ages, adolescent brain, from about 10 to 16ish, right? This is where the teenage brain is establishing its identity. Who will I become as an adult? So whatever is being exposed in those teenage years, you're basically starting to cement the character of that child. So if a kid becomes an alcoholic, it's going to make sense, right?
Right.
I'm gonna pray that nobody's giving 0 to 5-year-olds alcohol, but just in case, right? You're giving 0 to 5-year-olds alcohol. 0 to 5 years old is the prime time to teach a kid a different language. That's how hungry the brain is for understanding. So imagine placing anything other than positive learning into the brain of a 0 through 5-year-old. That becomes what the brain absorbs and starts to create space for, right? I want more of this. I want more of this. So I think if parents are going to do that, it is imperative that they understand how a child brain develops. Marijuana is not good for teenage brains. Like, it's really, really bad. And I had somebody come on the show to like explain why it's not good, because we already have cannabinoids in our brain as children. So weed only makes it worse because the brain doesn't understand, why am I getting extra of this? So now what ends up happening with that, for those parents that allow their kids to smoke with them, what you're doing is you're creating a couch potato. Giving kids marijuana is creating an adult couch potato. Find me somebody that doesn't apply to, and then I will say, okay, let me reach out to the researchers. But giving a teenager marijuana will create a couch potato, if not a criminal. Okay. So what create ACEs are the experiences that children are exposed to. So it's 10 of them, like I said. So if I see my mom and daddy fighting, arguing all the time, my brain is now creating space that says, I'm scared. I'm going to be scared more often because I'm constantly hearing noise in the other room, or I'm constantly hearing mommy and dad fight or argue, or gun violence in the community. Anything that's of violence is abnormal to a child's brain. That's an adverse childhood experience. You want me to keep going?
Yes, absolutely. I love it.
So the experiences is what creates the score, right? So the more of those experiences that happen, the brain is basically like, oh, that's just the way life's supposed to be. So it ends up making it where basically, like, if people were to get into it, it talks about how a child brain develops from back to front. This part behind our forehead is the last to develop. This is where we make our smart decisions. Y'all ever heard of the third eye, right? You heard of the third eye? That's the third eye.
Frontal lobe.
Yeah, right. So if all of these bad things are happening in my childhood, by the time I become an adult, ain't nothing processed up here, because I got all this fear back here. I got all this fight, which means I'm taking off running because I'm scared because the child molested and came home again, and now my body's freezing up because I can't fight him off. So it's basically causing the brain to become very fearful or angry.
So that's like
up here.
So I was looking at something regarding your venous nerve.
It's called a vagus nerve. VAGUS.
I'm sorry, you know what? Yes, I'm sorry. Your vagus nerve. Thank you. But yes. And so is that really the foundation of anxiety?
It has something to do with it. And let me do a disclaimer, y'all. I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm a well-studied person on this. So if you get here, don't be on like, I heard it from Basis Matters. So I want to put that out there. But
what's the phrase we have to give it to, Shannon? We don't diagnose, but we do discern.
We don't diagnose, we discern, and we educate, and we tell you, go find the source, go find the people that went to school to do all this.
Exactly.
So the vagus nerve plays a heavy part in like addictions, gambling to sex or whatever. So it does have a lot to do with those experiences that we have in childhood. It basically influences how all of those brain parts develop, right?
Okay.
And exposure to a whole bunch of hot mess stuff growing up in childhood, it basically creates a little animal, like a reptile. So if you see people always angry, on edge, and snapping on people, they probably had a very anxious childhood. Somebody was fighting a lot in their childhood, right?
Right.
That's just what this part, if you think about it, and they tell us that it's our reptilian brain.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm from Florida, so I see lizards all the time. I'm not going to hurt no lizard, but the minute they see me, even if it's my shadow, they take off running, right?
Right,
so
right.
They call this the reptilian part of the brain. So when the kids are exposed to all that stuff in childhood, you're basically creating, I mean, you're putting more energy into making that kid either an aggressive or withdrawn kid than a kid who has the ability to discern, like, oh, maybe that lizard's not going to bother me, or maybe that dog's not going to bother me, or not all men are like the one that molested me, you know?
That is so powerful. So where can we find this ACEs, where can we take the test?
I actually have the test on my website, but you can Google it and you can, I mean, there's so many people that offer it right now. Just Google ACE study quiz and you can find it. Otherwise, I'd encourage you to take it on acesmatter.org, because we also have some videos where you can like go look at an understanding of each of the different ACE scores. But acesmatter.org, and under understanding ACEs, you have an opportunity to take your quiz and you'll get your results emailed to you. But in short, when you take the quiz, it asks you a yes or no question. For everyone you say yes to, you can just add a point to it.
Wow. So how long? It doesn't take long to take it.
Does it? Take about five or fewer minutes to take it.
Wow. Wow.
And here's what we encourage people to do. Your ACE score is only a number that says you have a story. Your ACE score is kind of like a predictor to say, hey, here's your risk assessment to diabetes. Here's your risk assessment to obesity. Here's your risk assessment to cancer, heart disease, and even there's another one that I'm missing, stroke, right? Those are the top 5 diseases, out of the top 10 diseases that cause death. ACEs are contributed to 5 of them, but it's not an end all be all, because what God did for us when he said, renew your mind, he gave us a brain that is, in so many words, they call it brain plasticity. So plastic, if you can kind of mold plastic, you can do a thing. So it's not a death sentence, but it is saying, hey, your brain needs some calming down. And until you calm your brain down and get your brain back to its factory settings, it's going to continue to snap on people, or it's going to continue to run when it feels a threat in a relationship. So it's not a death sentence. We try to tell people that it's an awareness thing. Like, hey, the next time I go see a therapist, I want to find a therapist that knows a little bit about childhood trauma, because maybe that's why I'm all stressed up here.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's amazing that we can find out in just 5 short minutes.
Yeah. 5 short minutes. You will have the key to a lot of life's questions. Like, maybe not why everybody was kung fu fighting, or why, a penny for your thoughts, whatever. But you'll have a lot of answers. It ain't gonna answer all the other questions, but it's a place to start. If I had the ACE stuff 10 years ago, I'd have been a lot more ahead than I am now.
So, I mean, that just makes a lot of sense, because, when we know better, we do better, at least about our own selves. We have somewhere to start.
Yeah.
I want to know about emotional abuse when it comes to parents. How does that work?
And I think I shared this with you on the previous show. I learned how to be emotionally abusive from my mom. She wasn't emotionally abusive to me, but she taught me how to be emotionally abusive to other people.
Okay,
my mama loved us, and nobody could not mess with her kids. So emotional abuse is mental abuse to a child. A child's brain, factory settings, was not designed to be constantly criticized.
Okay.
It takes 10 positive comments for every 1 negative piece of feedback you give a child. Okay. So if a child is constantly being, clean up your room, you got to go depress them dishes, you need to lose weight. So if you're constantly criticizing your child, you're basically creating a child that doesn't love themselves. because the parent is the first teacher, right? You're the
Right.
first teacher, and my teacher is constantly complaining about me. So now I become this adult that goes to the store with these shorts on with these kids and not combing my hair and not caring about the way I look because, the first teacher I had told me I was fat, ugly, and stinky. Or that I wasn't going to amount to nothing because I'm just like my daddy.
Wow.
I used to get told growing up. I got teased a lot growing up because I was chocolate. Girl, now I wasn't chocolate. I was burnt. Like I was black. Girl, I was like, I went this black as yeah.
You want to know what? If we're going to talk about color, I always wanted to be darker. My grandfather was dark.
Yeah.
And he was so handsome. Oh, my grandfather was handsome. And he just had the prettiest, darkest skin. Can't see a blemish for nothing. Anyway.
Well, dark probably for boys were good, but for girls, I came from a family where my grandfather was mixed. He was half white, half black. So most of my siblings were fair skinned like you or light skinned with good hair. And because I didn't have that, I want you to imagine I'm constantly being reminded how not pretty I am in comparison to the other relatives. So I was at home from the adults and my cousins and my siblings didn't pick on me, but we played the dozens with each other and it was talking about each other. And the kid just didn't understand that, right? Like,
right.
Understand. But then at some point we normalized it and we just kind of sucked it up and took it. So to be bullied, if you will, at home, now we understand that was bullying. And then going to school, because those kids that I'm at school with in the hood, they parents doing the same thing to them. So they come to school doing it to you. So that is emotional abuse that gets registered in the brain. In a portion of the brain called the hippocampus, which is like the brain. Yeah. It's the brain's bookshelf. So the hippocampus is the brain's bookshelf. It stores everything, right? So emotional abuse leads to, who it comes from, whether it's, especially if it's coming from the parents, it leads to a couple of things. I became an emotionally abusive parent, right? And I didn't know that, right? Just by like not giving my daughter more positive compliments than negative ones. Like she now struggled. I mean, I gave her 7 aces. So she now struggles with self-confidence, perfectionism.
Wow. That is, I'm going to pause for 2 things. One, I just want to highlight this, that our friend Leaf, he said that he just took the test and he answered yes way more times than he thought he would, which is huge. Yeah. And so I encourage everybody to take the test right over here at acesmatter.org. Go over there. As a matter of fact, it obviously doesn't take you very long. Take the test and share your feedback with us. And so we probably have way more aces than we think we do. As you talk about it, I'm going to run and take the test, but I already know I have some aces, child. I have taken so much time I focused purposely on healing myself. And then like you, I did it through my relationship with God, just because of who he is. Yeah. He is so careful with me. Yeah. That's why I appreciate. I mean, he's so careful, and you just can't get that in a regular human being. You have somebody who is just eternally loving. And so that's just that's just really huge. And then I wanted to celebrate you because you I gave my child 7 aces.
Yeah. That's why I do the work, right? Oh, that's why I do. Don't do that to no other kid. Don't do. And I took her out the ghetto. Don't do that to no other kid just because you're doing it because your mom and them did it to you. And I find things are different for these groups of kids than they were when we were growing up and when our parents were growing up. So, we have to be a lot more mindful of what the science says and what Scripture says. Don't. What does the Scripture say about don't? Not chastise your child. You know which one I'm talking about is don't. God, we just said.
All I'm thinking is, spare the rod, spoil the child, and I know that's not what you're talking about.
Well, we need to unpack that one, but it's don't provoke your child to anger.
Oh, yes. Oh, do not provoke your child to anger.
Okay, and
Is
so
that the one?
understanding, no, yeah, that's it. Do not provoke your children to anger, and obviously lead them, the way they should go, and they will never, astray. But don't provoke your child to anger. Going upside your kid head, you basically shaking up that 3-pound thing, and you were making it. I went upside my kid's head quite a few times because I thought I could scare her into compliance. That stuff doesn't work. Just because it was done to us, it does not work. If you believe in science, if you believe in scripture, it don't work. It don't work. It don't work. Well, it don't work well.
So should we spank our children or should we not spank our
We should
children?
not spank our children. That's a lot. Man, that's a lot. And I'm gonna tell you, I'll give you the research on that. Several doctors, if we were to Google it and we to not misunderstand this spirit of rods fall the child. First of all, discipline comes from disciple, which comes from instructor. It's much easier to spank our child than to sit down and talk to the child about the behavior. So you was watching porn, huh? Where you get that from?
Okay.
Otherwise,
you out your drawer. That's what the kids gonna say.
We as parents was letting them spirits in, and we want to look crazy because the kids was doing it. Where you think they got it from? The spirits. So you was showing your butt in school. Go get me a belt, right? All it does is two things. The brain don't understand it at that age, right? How many where do you see animals even in the kingdom spanking their children? Animals don't even, nobody does that. Like we did that because that's what was done to us, right? But spanking does create more aggressive children. So now you've got a kid that you've been spanking from 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and then they go to kindergarten hitting people, and now you got to come get them. Where do you think they got it from? Right?
So I like what he says here at the end. He says we need to it's a great topic. We need to reimagine healing of damaged emotions. That's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Reimagine healing of damaged emotions. I love that.
We have to. Otherwise, we're going to continue to hurt our kids, and then they're going to need healing. So therapists will always be in business if we don't change our practices, right? And so will Satan. Satan and the therapist will love it if we just ignore this. But there is no book that I know of that supports beating a child, spanking a child.
I wonder if there's anywhere in the world where that is truly abnormal. Like that's just not what they do.
That would be a good. That would be an interesting thing to know. I do have colleagues right now that are working in Africa, and the Caribbean, because it's just like they get their butts whipped with sticks, right? And so he's having a very successful experience. My guy, shout out to Dave Lockridge. He has a business called Ace Overcomers, and he does work internationally. And the work that he's doing with this group of people who culturally, that's how they discipline their children. Are changing the way they think once they learned about what happens to the brain when you do that. So imagine if a culture like that doesn't have a lot of access to some of the same things that we've had access to historically. If poor communities like that can change their mind, because he's working in the poorest of the poorest communities in Rwanda and Uganda and forgot the other place, but then also in the Caribbean, that's all they know to do is spank, right? And so now he's group of people that are looking at different ways. But in order for a parent to not spank, that parent has to have their own ACEs healed.
Okay, that's 100% right. We have to have
I can only discipline you the way my nervous system will let me. You getting on my nerves, go get me a belt. Parents have to pull back, go take 10 seconds, take some deep breath, use your nostrils. God breathe air into our nostrils. Go take a deep breath. If you love your child, you will take a deep breath and step back, because you were mad at the behavior, not the child. I am mad that you went and ate that cereal when I told you were getting ready to have dinner. I'm not mad at you because I love you. You made a poor choice. Mommy's upset. I know it sounds kind of white, but take some deep breath, right? Like take a deep breath, because otherwise that kid is going to interpret your spanking, your hitting, your physical abuse, which is an ACE, as I'm a bad person. Do you want your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old walking around thinking they're a bad person because they ate milk before lunch? Or because they ate cereal before lunch? We don't want that.
So I'm going to give a shout out to George. George is he's over in Kenya, and I'm just curious. but he works with very affluent people. He works with um, very highly educated people, um, and I mean, but he does also from time to time, I believe, if I remember correctly, work with some people from underserved areas as well. But he has coached people all the way into being newsmakers. That
Mhm.
said, I'm wondering what he would say about whooping children and connecting with people with ACEs. So, George, if you can speak to that maybe a little bit in the chat, or if you just want to hang back, that's fine. But I am curious what you think. It's like 3 or 4 in the morning. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and drop him the what is it, the backdoor link so he can get it, because I would
yeah.
love to know like how they're doing it, but
hmm He's
yeah.
gonna be he's gonna be on here. I'm having a Kings with Vision.
Ooh, I like.
Yeah, I'm having a Kings with Vision show, so he'll be on that. It's going to be fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
Awesome.
And a guy by the name of Mr. Metoo. Um,
You told me
I
about
want
him.
that he does a lot with men with ACEs, so he works with that. So we'll definitely have some of that discussion, on there. We'll
Yeah,
definitely have some of that on there. Um, when I think about ACEs and I'm listening to you, it really does sound very Freudian to me,
yeah,
because he was like, lay down on the couch and tell me about your past.
yeah,
And this is going to the past. The only difference well, not the only difference, but the difference that I see, right up front is where he connects the idea, okay, you have this past, so this is what you need to be careful for in the future. Like it's more precise
yeah,
versus endless talking. You can
yeah.
do this in 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. If you were emotionally abused and you're having a hard time getting along with people at work because people say you're just not approachable or whatever, right? It'll help you understand like how you respond to certain situations.
hmm
And Erica, I tell people that when you know your triggers,
Okay.
somebody said or did something, whatever, now I'm triggered. You know them because your body starts to change. Your
Okay.
hands start sweating, your heart start beating. You know when you trigger because you're ready to snap.
Uh-huh.
Knowing your triggers will tell you where you need to start. So the
Mm.
more you can identify, like why did I get triggered in the morning? Once your brain comes back online, that helps you understand like maybe it was because that person lied to me and my daddy lied to me and kept telling me he was going to come back and see me on my birthday, but he never did. So maybe I associated that situation with my dad being a liar or whatever, right? So when you notice what your triggers are, you know that that's where your healing needs to start. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I told y'all this last time, is like we get stuck where we got stuck.
Right.
We get
Right.
stuck in adulthood bodies, and we behave at the age of wherever that trauma is still sitting. So whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, whatever it is, our behaviors will mimic where we got stuck. Physical neglect, right? Physical neglect is one where if you were a child that went without, like you didn't have the name brand stuff, or you was hungry, or you stunk when you went to school, if you got picked on for that, if you were physically neglected as a child and your brain noticed it when you went to school that other kids had the basic necessities that you didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
one of two things are going to happen in your adulthood. You're going to overcompensate for that by buying things you can't afford and then put them on social media so everybody can see it, because when you were in fifth grade, you didn't get them Jordans. So now you want everybody to see that new Rolex you just bought, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
either get stuck in that behavior, or you get stuck in the place where you have a very unhealthy relationship with money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot that rolls into it that can answer a lot of questions with whatever problem you're struggling with as an adult. Always go back to your childhood to see, could it have been something there?
Mm-hmm. So you get your aces, you start understanding your aces, you stop whooping you stop whooping your kids.
Not with your kids.
So then, one of the things I'm curious about, how do you help your kids? You know, now you made this monster, they're 15. they don't want to be bothered with you anyway. What do you do?
If you can't offer them the healing they need, you find support, which is what ACEs matter. We're kind of like the middleman, helping people find support. That's the direction that we're going. So the first thing you do, and I had a friend that you introduced me to share, disclose a little bit today. The minute you catch yourself doing it, or you realize you learn about ACEs and you still got kids under the age of 18 in your house, get them some help. There are so many
Mm-hmm.
therapists right now that understand childhood trauma. The kid may not even know that they need it, but if you don't want that kid to grow up with those unhealed or unresolved traumas, right now, go get them some help, and then get you some too. If you can afford it, get you some too. ACEs Matter tries to identify families in need that cannot afford the counseling or the therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
we direct them into the path of people like yourself, zip code heroes, who are able to say, I don't mind helping this family. I'll give this family, I'll take one for the team and help. So we don't want money to be the reason why you can't get it, but the
Right.
healing starts with healthy adults. So mama, daddy, caregiver, if you know that maybe you're not ready to process your trauma and you got these kids, you
Mm-hmm.
have to get therapy. And I have on what's her name? I have on
Okay.
narcissism.
Yes.
Prayer and therapy work, right?
Yes.
Counseling, and I mean certified professional people. I'm not throwing shade to our pastors, because obviously they can help too, but you definitely want to find somebody that specializes in childhood trauma and go
Okay.
right to the source. It'll save you a lot of money, so you're not a year in and she never even asked you no question about your childhood. So find somebody that deals with childhood trauma.
Okay. That is fabulous. Now, don't beat me up. Don't get me.
It's
Don't
okay.
get me. But because you might be already filled up, and but I just know you have this very exclusive program. You have this very exclusive program that people can apply to, and they may get accepted. But you mentioned it. It is zip code heroes, and I know there's criteria, but people should apply. Not sure. I know you have a very few spots left, and they're very exclusive. But I still want people to know about the program, because we do reach a wide audience, and there's high quality people in my network. So tell
Yes,
us about the program. Yes, tell us about the program, and then maybe somebody can go ahead and apply and perhaps get in.
awesome. So thank you, Erica, too, for that plug. ACEs Matter, we are recruiting by referral zip code heroes. And a zip
Mhm.
code hero is somebody who has a certification or a skill set like yourself, that can coach, that can counsel, that can mentor spiritually, physically, mentally. A family that is in need, a family that may not have the resources to be able to afford your services in the beginning. So we're looking for zip code heroes, obviously, who have their own spiritual foundation. Like, that is a criteria, because this work cannot be done without, Jesus Christ. Um, it is basically a tribe of people
Mhm.
that are part of this network, where we basically we will become a family of people that go out and we reach beyond our own current zip code. So you
Mhm.
could be in Florida and working with the family in Missouri. So that's the type of impact that we're looking for. So on the application, it'll basically tell you what type of specialties that our families need. And zip code heroes do as little as they can do something as little as coming on the show that we
Mhm.
will have a live broadcast to like share their gifts there, or they can adopt a family basically. So
Okay.
basically, zip code heroes adopt a family, and that is how we give back. And in exchange, the families obviously become like a walking billboard for you, because you're offering healing for those families that may not have even been aware that ACEs have been passed down generationally. So a little pitch, but it definitely is an exclusive program. As I told you, we have a limit of 144 zip
Mhm.
code heroes that we are recruiting, because we do believe in our tribe being very close knit and tight. So if you are
Mhm.
interested, please apply. If seats open up, we obviously always want to screen new people. So definitely we encourage people to apply if you got some gifts you want to share outside your zip code.
That's true. And so the reality is, apply, even though you might not get in, apply, because the openings only come up when somebody leaves,
Yes, that is correct.
when
Yeah.
someone leaves. But, do apply, because if I recall right, you do keep those applications on file. So
Yep, we're always screening. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. So we're keeping it small because we want to make sure we have an intimate, close relationship with the people that are signing up to in this agreement to work with ACEs Matter. So that's why we want to keep it small. And I know 144 does not seem small, but when you talk about millions of people struggling with depression and 1 in every 6 people having 4 or more ACEs, there's plenty of work for us to do.
Right. And there you guys bond through training. There's other networking going on. So it's a very exclusive opportunity. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I
I
just love
love it. Your name drop. It works. We need it. We need it. I got a lot of families that need help. So the more the merrier.
awesome. Awesome. So you know what? I'm gonna call out George. He gave us a nice blurb here. But he's doing a lot of work over in Kenya. I'm going to encourage you to apply. You know, I'll see what I can.
I love it. Bring me somebody from overseas. We got work. I would love it. I would love it.
Yes. Oh, here he says often adults ignore own childhood struggles, and that
Yes,
is true.
that is true.
That is true, and I love this. Where he says here, we have to be global citizens. That is 100% true. If the coronavirus has taught us anything, is that we are one nation. Like the whole world is one nation, because the Delta variant was somewhere else. This
Right.
the coronavirus itself was somewhere else. You
Mm,
know, it was
mm.
completely somewhere else. Okay, so you just dropped a link to zip code Heroes Family. Please do apply. I know you guys are some amazing experts. It might take some time to get in, but it is worth it. Um, Cendie, do you have any last words that you want to drop to the family?
For those of y'all that are listening live or maybe might catch the replay, you got this, right? Like I'm going to say you got this. And I know the adversary likes us to think that, oh, don't, you should give up. Don't go for that because we got superpowers. And once you understand how to tame your aces, your superpowers will flourish. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and if you are a believer in scripture and if you are a believer in Jesus Christ and the healing that he can do, all this does is help you get closer to him to understand that the adversary came for you in your childhood because it had a fear that you was going to be like Jesus. And if the adversary was tearing you down in childhood, he could mess with your mind so that you wouldn't seek our Father Jesus Christ, seek our Father and Jesus Christ. So I like to take people back to Old Testament days when they tried to kill off all the babies. They said go get
Ooh,
them all,
ooh.
go do whatever, throw them to the alligators. Anybody 2-0? What was it? 2 and under? Was it two and
Yeah,
under?
2 and under. I think you're right. There you go.
Remember how they was trying to kill off all the babies because they was afraid. So I like for people to know that if you had a traumatic childhood, it was nothing but the adversary afraid of who you would become if it didn't try to disrupt your childhood. Don't let that be the end of your book. Now that you understand what these things are, you can take your superpowers back because it tried to infiltrate your childhood to keep you away from using your gifts. So ACEs are not a death sentence. God gave us this renew your mind. That's what he meant. It's brain plasticity. We can fix it. And we know how, we can show you how to fix it so that you don't feel like life is not worth going on with. So if that's the case, right?
That's right. You know,
Learning about ACEs can create better parents and more mentally healthy adults. Who wouldn't want that?
you know what? So
Who
this
wouldn't want that?
it's funny that you said hero, because earlier I was thinking about what makes you a hero and then what is your kryptonite, right? Okay. So when you have an ace that's undiscovered, it is your kryptonite. But when you discover your own aces, you let your mess be your mission, and all of a sudden,
Mm.
poof, superhero.
Unstoppable. Unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
Yeah.
So this is amazing. Family, I am so glad that you spent time with us. Cendie, thank you, thank you, thank you once again for sharing your time and your heart and just being so generous with your wisdom. I am grateful for you. You know I'm having you back again.
I love coming on here, and I love your followers. Anybody who's watching your show, you endorse them, I endorse them. So thank you. I love
Amen.
Sister Right Heartbeats.
Yes, you know what? Oh my God, this is so amazing. I just, my smile, I just started cheesing, my cheeks hurt. I love you guys.
You make my cheeks hurt. You make my cheeks hurt.
All right, amazing. Y'all have a good night. Thank you for watching.
All right, Erica. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.